The night my parents told me my future was on hold, they did it over burnt coffee and a buzzing kitchen light. No shouting, no drama. Just one calm conversation where I found out my grandparents' college gift had quietly become my golden brother's lifeline and my dead end. I was 17 the night my parents told me my future was on hold. Not in a dramatic shouting kind of way. Not with tears or ultimatums. Just three people at a scratched oak kitchen table, the overhead light buzzing faintly, the smell of burnt coffee lingering because my dad had left the pot on too long again. "I know you had your heart set on state," my mom said, folding and unfolding the same paper napkin until it tore. "But things change, Michael. Sometimes family has to come first." I remember staring at the college brochure on the table between us, the bold blue letters that said, "Welcome, Class of 20, and the photo of the campus quad in autumn, all golden leaves and smiling kids in hoodies. I'd run my thumb over that picture so many times the edge of the page had started to curl. "What do you mean, come first?" I asked. My voice sounded weirdly calm in my own ears. "I am family." Mom didn't meet my eyes. Dad did. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, the old flannel shirt he wore on weekends stretched tight over his gut. Behind him, the ancient fridge hummed, plastered with magnets from every cheap road trip we'd ever taken. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something he didn't want to swallow. "Your brother needs help," he said finally. "We all do." There it was, the word that had defined my entire childhood, the gravitational center of our house. Brother, Adam, 3 years older, star quarterback in high school. Easy smile, easy charm, easier life. If there was a golden child in the Cole family, it wasn't a secret. From the day I was old enough to understand anything, the rules were simple. Adam got the spotlight, I filled in the shadows. When Adam scored a touchdown, the whole family went out for pizza, even if it meant Dad picked up an extra shift and Mom pretended she liked cheap beer. When I won the county math competition in 8th grade, Mom said, "That's nice, honey," while she loaded the dishwasher because she had to get Adam to practice. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need cheerleaders, that grades and scholarships would be my way out, even if nobody clapped in the bleachers for a test score. So I'd done everything right. Honor roll every semester, AP classes, part-time job at the hardware store to prove I could pull my weight. No parties, no drama. I'd spent nights under that same buzz of the kitchen light, hunched over textbooks that smelled like old paper and highlighter ink, believing that if I just worked hard enough, college would be the doorway to a different life. And for a while, it looked like the universe had agreed. A guidance counselor who actually liked me. A legendary panicked sprint to submit my application before the portal crashed. An email that started with "Congratulations" and the fund. The Cole College Fund. My grandparents had started it when I was born, back when tuition didn't cost as much as a small house. Every birthday, every Christmas, they slipped a check into a card and said the same thing. "Put it towards school, Mikey. Your mind will take you further than your feet ever will." They died within a year of each other when I was 14, and the funeral smelled like lilies and rain and old wool coats. After we got back from the cemetery, Dad made this big show of clapping me on the shoulder, guiding me to the kitchen where a bottle of cheap whiskey sat half empty on the counter. "Your grandma and grandpa left you something," he said, voice thick. "College money. We'll keep it safe for you. When the time comes, you'll be taken care of." He'd patted my back like he'd done something noble. I remember the warmth that bloomed in my chest, something like hope. For once, the future didn't feel like a cliff. I could see the bridge stretching out in front of me, plank by plank. So when I got into state with nearly a full scholarship, tuition covered but room, board, and books still on me, the first thing I did was ask about the fund. Dad had smiled then, that big booming smile he pulled out on holidays. "Don't worry about it," he'd said, waving a hand. "We'll make it happen. That's what family's for." Now, 4 months later, same kitchen, same table, that bridge was suddenly disappearing, one plank at a time. I swallowed, pushing the brochure out of the way, leaning forward so they had to look at me. "You said the money Grandpa and Grandma left was for college," I said slowly. "For me, you said it was safe." "It was for the family," Dad cut in quickly, too quickly. "They wanted to help the family, Michael. not fund some fantasy life where you run off to who knows where and forget where you came from. He always did that, turned things into an accusation before I could even finish my sentence. Mom reached over and touched his arm, like she was trying to keep him from going too far. "We're not saying you can't go to college," she said. "We're just asking you to be realistic." I stared at her. "Realistic is working my ass off for 4 years to get here," I said. "It's getting an academic scholarship. It's planning every class and every test around this." I tapped the brochure with my finger. "Realistic is the fact that I need help with what the scholarship doesn't cover." A muscle in Dad's jaw ticked. He looked older in that moment than I'd ever seen him, lines carved deeper into his face, gray threading his hair at the temples. "Your brother had a setback," he said. "You know that. The layoffs weren't his fault." Here we go, I thought. The holy scripture of Adam's bad luck. I did know. We all knew. Adam worked sales at a car dealership that shut down last winter when the owner got caught cooking the books. One day he had a job, the next day he didn't. He spent the next month on our couch, beer cans piling up on the coffee table, the TV playing daytime judge shows while Mom tiptoed around him like he was made of glass. "He's got a baby coming," Mom added quickly. "Heather's due in September. Do you know how expensive that is?" "Yeah," I said. "I can Google things." "Don't get smart with your mother," Dad snapped. "You don't have a mortgage, you don't have a wife, you don't have a kid on the way, you've got time, Adam doesn't." There it was, the core belief of our house laid bare on the table between us. Adam's needs were urgent, mine were optional. "So what?" I asked softly, because if I didn't speak softly, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. "What does that have to do with my college fund?" Mom's eyes flicked to Dad, then back to me. She inhaled like she was about to dive into cold water. "We used it," she said. For a second, the words didn't register. They hung in the air above the table, meaningless syllables. Then my brain caught up. The kitchen seemed to tilt under me. The buzzing light got louder, the corners of my vision narrowing in. "You used it," I repeated. My own voice sounded far away. "For what?" "The down payment," Dad said, and now he wouldn't look away. He stared right at me, chin lifted like he was daring me to challenge him. "On Adam and Heather's house." I stared at him, my heart hammered in my chest, each beat a shockwave rippling outward. "You used my college money to buy them a house," I said slowly, tasting each word, making sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Dad slammed his palm on the table, silverware rattling in the drawer. "Don't talk like that," he barked. "It wasn't your college money. It was family money." "That's not what Grandpa said," I shot back before I could stop myself. "He said he wanted me to get an education." "And where do you think he'd want your brother's child to live?" Dad demanded. "On the street? In some crappy apartment overrun with roaches?" Mom flinched. "Okay, that's enough," she whispered. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped loud against the worn linoleum. "How much was in it?" I asked. My voice had gone cold. "How much did you take?" Mom's fingers twisted the napkin again, shredding it piece by piece. "After everything, around 65,000, she said quietly. "We'd added what we could over the years, too." 65,000. I swallowed hard, my throat burned. In my head, numbers ricocheted off each other. Dorm costs, meal plans, books that cost more than some used cars. Even with the scholarship, that money was the difference between attending state and commuting to community college from my childhood bedroom, working dead-end shifts until I collapsed. "You didn't think to ask me?" I said. My voice cracked on the last word. Dad snorted. "Ask you," he said, like I'd suggested they consult the dog. "You'd have said no. You're a kid. You don't understand how tight things are. The bank was breathing down our necks about the second mortgage, your mom's medical bills last winter. And you still bought Adam a brand new Ford last year," I cut in. "And you still paid for his wedding venue when he and Heather went over budget. But my college fund, that was negotiable?" "Watch your tone," Dad growled. "Why?" I shot back, something inside me finally snapping. "So I learned to be grateful that you stole from me politely?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't steal from you, Michael," she said. "We sacrificed. That's what parents do. We make hard choices. You're smart. You'll land on your feet. You always do." The worst part was that she sounded like she believed it, like she honestly thought this was some kind of compliment, proof of their faith in me. Do you hear yourself? I asked, shaking my head. You're punishing me for being capable. You're rewarding Adam for screwing up. That's your brother you're talking about, Dad snapped. He's had a rough couple years. Yeah, I said. So have I. For a long heartbeat, none of us spoke. The fridge hummed. The clock over the stove ticked. Outside, a car drove by, bass rattling the window for a second before fading. So what now? I asked finally. My voice felt hollow, scraped out. I just don't go, Dad sighed, like he was the one being burdened. You can still study, he said. Community college is perfectly fine. Plenty of people get their degrees that way. You can live at home, help out with bills. Take a couple years, see what happens. Maybe by then Adam will be more stable and... And what? I snapped. You'll pay me back? Mom winced. We can't do that right now, she whispered. Can you ever? I pressed. Dad's jaw locked. You don't talk to us like that under our roof, he said. There it was again, our roof, our house, our decisions. Except my grandparents' money had helped pay for this roof too. Their photos stared down from the living room wall, between cheap Christmas decorations and a faded picture of Adam in his football uniform. I looked at them now, at their frozen smiles, wondering what they'd say if they knew. Go to your room, Dad said finally. We'll talk when you've calmed down. Calmed down. Like this was a teenage tantrum, not the demolition of a life I'd built plank by plank. I stood slowly, my chair legs screeching again. My hands were shaking, but I curled them into fists until my nails bit my palms. I could feel Mom's eyes on me, pleading silently for me not to make it worse. Don't bother, I said quietly. There's nothing left to talk about. I walked down the narrow hallway toward my room, the same hallway I'd raced through as a kid, socks sliding on the floor, Mom yelling at us not to run. My posters of bands and distant cities peeled slightly at the edges on my bedroom walls. My acceptance letter lay on my desk, print crisp and hopeful. I closed the door behind me and leaned my forehead against the cool wood, breathing hard. It felt like there were two versions of me standing in that small room. The kid who'd believed that if he worked hard enough, everything would fall into place, and the one who'd just watched his own parents cash out his future like it was loose change in a jar. My phone buzzed on the desk, a text from Adam. Hey, lil' bro, just heard, thanks for stepping up for the family. You'll understand when you're older. I stared at it. The rage that flared in my chest was white hot, cleansing, burning away the numbness for a moment. Stepping up. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the springs creaking under my weight. Outside, I could hear Dad's low voice, Mom's muffled sobs. The house suddenly felt smaller than it ever had, the walls closer, the ceiling lower. Okay, I thought, forcing myself to breathe normally. Okay, they'd made their choice. They'd shown me exactly where I ranked. Now I had a choice too. I could crumble, accept their version of realistic, let my dreams shrink to fit the size of their imagination. Or I could find another way. It wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be easy. It sure as hell wouldn't be what I'd planned. But for the first time in my life, I understood something with brutal clarity. No one was coming to save me. Not my parents, not my brother, not the ghost of my grandfather's promises. If I wanted an education, a different life, anything beyond this small, sagging house on a dead-end street, I would have to build it myself from the ground up. Even if I had to do it with empty pockets and no safety net. Even if it meant starting that very night. The first thing I did that night was email my guidance counselor. Not cry, not scream into a pillow, not punch holes in the wall like Adam did whenever the Seahawks lost. I sat at my desk under the dim glow of a cheap desk lamp, opened my laptop and wrote, Hi, Mrs. Parker, something has changed with my college funding. I need to know what my options are if I can't afford room and board at State. Is there any way to defer or transfer the scholarship? I really don't want to give this up. I hovered over send for a second, then clicked it before I could lose my nerve. Then I pulled out a crumpled notepad from my drawer and started writing numbers. Scholarship amount, estimated costs, minimum wage hourly pay from the hardware store, how many hours I could work without flunking out of classes. By the time the sun crept up over the tired roofs of our street, the paper was full of scratched-out calculations and arrows. None of it looked pretty. But one thing was clear. If I wanted to go to college, I was going to have to learn to live on almost nothing. And I was going to have to work. A lot. Mrs. Parker called me into her office the next day. She was one of those rare adults who remembered what it felt like to be a kid whose life was at the mercy of other people's choices. Her office smelled like coffee and vanilla candles. Posters about "Follow Your Dreams" curled at the corners on the walls. She listened without interrupting as I told her what my parents had done. When I finished, she sat back slowly, eyes soft but sharp, like she was trying to see past my words to the weight underneath them. "I'm so sorry, Michael," she said. "That's a lot." I shrugged, staring at the floor so she wouldn't see my eyes sting. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. "Anything at all? I'll take more loans, get a second job, whatever." She tapped a pen against the desk. "The scholarship committee won't hold your place if you can't enroll this year," she said. "They have a wait list. But," she leaned forward, "State has a transfer pathway. If you do 2 years at community college with strong grades, you can transfer in as a junior. The tuition scholarship won't be the same, but we might be able to help with some grant money, and you'll save a lot on living costs by staying at home." The word home sat like a brick in my chest. I nodded anyway. "Okay," I said. "Community college, then transfer." It felt like swallowing broken glass. She watched me for a moment, then said quietly, "This isn't fair, you know, and it's okay to be angry about that." I met her eyes. "I don't have time to be angry," I said. "I have to figure out how to pay for it." Her mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That attitude," she said, "is the reason I know you'll make it." That afternoon, I went to the community college website and filled out an application. I clicked submit with far less ceremony than I'd done for state. There was no dorm to imagine, no quad to daydream about, just gray cinder block buildings 15 minutes away, night classes full of exhausted adults, and me trying to carve a different path out of the same town. At dinner that night, nobody asked how my day went. Mom put a casserole on the table and asked Adam if Heather had picked out nursery colors. Dad talked about some guy at work who'd nearly lost a finger to a faulty saw. I sat in my usual chair, ate my food, and thought about the email from the community college confirming my enrollment. When Dad finally turned to me, it was only to say, "You'll need to tell the hardware store you can take more hours now that you're not going off to state." "I already did," I said. He grunted, satisfied. The next 2 years blurred into a single long, tired season. By day, I sat in cramped community college classrooms that smelled like whiteboard markers and stale coffee, learning calculus next to single moms and laid-off factory workers starting over. By night, I stocked shelves and rang up customers at the hardware store until my back ached and my feet throbbed. The fluorescent lights turned my skin sallow in the security mirrors. My name tag, Michael, started to peel at the corners from sweat and friction. On weekends, when other people my age were going to parties or sleeping in, I did side gigs, landscaping, moving furniture, hauling junk for old ladies who tipped in quarters and homemade cookies. Every dollar I earned, I split in two. Half went to tuition, books, bus fare. The other half went into a savings account I opened at a different bank than my parents used. I didn't tell them about it. Once, early on, Mom knocked on my door while I was studying. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "I talked to Aunt Linda today," she said. "Her friend's son dropped out of college and is making good money in construction. You don't have to push yourself so hard, you know. Life doesn't always work out the way you plan." "I know," I said, not looking up from my textbook. "I'm the one it didn't work out for." She flinched, then straightened. "We all make sacrifices, Michael," she said quietly. "One day you'll understand." She left before I could answer. I stared at the closed door for a long time, then went back to my problem set. Understanding and forgiving were not, I decided, the same thing. Real estate came into my life by accident. It started with a leaky faucet. Mr. Alvarez was one of our regulars at the hardware store. Late 60s, wiry, always in the same faded work jacket that smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. He owned a couple of old duplexes on the north side of town, the kind of buildings with peeling paint and crooked porches that renters complained about but never left because the rent was cheap. He came in one Tuesday evening holding a corroded faucet part in his hand, squinting at the wall of plumbing supplies like it had personally offended him. "Need a new cartridge, Mr. A?" I asked, stepping out from behind the counter. He sighed. "Tenant called." Says the sink's been dripping for a week. You know how much water that wastes? He glanced at me. You study, right? Numbers? Engineering, I said. At least that's the plan. He snorted. Well, use that big brain and find me the part that won't fall apart in 6 months. I dug around, found him a better quality replacement, explained why it would last longer. He listened, actually listened, eyebrows lifting. You ever think about fixing things for yourself instead of for other people? He asked. I don't own anything, I said, unless you count a 10-year-old Honda with a dented bumper. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, Come by on Saturday. I got some stuff could use an extra pair of hands. I'll pay cash. Saturday I showed up at one of his duplexes with my work boots and a box of tools. We spent the day patching drywall, unclogging a drain, replacing a busted outlet. Mr. Alvarez moved slower than he probably had 20 years ago, but his hands were sure, his eyes sharp. At lunch, we sat on the front steps eating ham sandwiches out of plastic bags. The street was quiet, lined with similar tired buildings, sagging under the weight of deferred maintenance and low expectations. You own all of these? I asked, gesturing down the block. He laughed. God, no, just this one and the one on the corner. The rest belong to idiots who don't fix their roofs and wonder why the water bill's through the ceiling. How did you get them? I pressed. The buildings. It was the first time I'd heard someone in my orbit talk about owning something more substantial than a car. He took a sip from his thermos, considering. Bought the first one after I retired from the factory, he said. Saved every penny, got a dump that the city was threatening to condemn. Spent a year fixing it up, rented it out, used the rent to help buy the second. Slow and steady, bricks and mortar, people always need a place to live. He looked at me sideways. You're smart. You work hard. You could do something like that if you stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. I laughed, a little bitter. With what money? He shrugged. Start small. Partner with someone. Look for what other people miss. It's not about being rich. It's about control. When you own the roof over your head, nobody can yank it away from you because their favorite son needs a down payment. The words hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't told him about Adam, about the money, about the nights I lay awake listening to the house creak, wondering how it was that 4 walls could feel so much like a prison. It's not that simple, I muttered. He held my gaze. It never is, but it's possible. That night, after a long shower to wash off the drywall dust, I opened my laptop and typed, "How to buy a rental property with no money" into the search bar. I expected get-rich-quick scams and sleazy gurus. I got those, sure, but I also found forums, blogs by regular people, stories of folks who'd worked night shifts and saved every cent, of carpenters who bought beat-up houses, lived in one side, rented the other, teachers with 3 units on the side, immigrants who'd turned one tiny duplex into 10. The idea lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. I already knew how to live on nothing. I knew how to fix things with my hands. I understood, on a gut level, the difference between being at someone else's mercy and having a say in my own life. What if I quietly built something of my own while everyone was busy watching Adam's highlight reel? The first year, nothing happened. I saved. I watched. I learned the language, equity, cash flow, inspection contingencies. I'd scroll through online listings at 2 in the morning, squinting at grainy photos of moldy basements and overgrown yards, running numbers in my head. At work, Mr. Alvarez quizzed me about cap rates while we stood in the lumber aisle. At school, I shifted my electives to anything that smelled like it might help. Basic accounting, urban planning, even a course on property law taught by a bored adjunct who looked like he hadn't smiled in a decade. My parents had no idea. To them, I was just the kid who hadn't moved out yet, the one still in that little college, as Dad called it, with a dismissive wave of his hand. The one who picked up Adam from the bar when he'd had too much to drink, who babysat my niece and nephew when Heather wanted a break. "Thank God for you," Mom would sigh sometimes, handing me the baby. "You're so dependable." It burned, but I took the praise like fuel. At the hardware store, I paid attention to customers who bought in bulk. Contractors, landlords, flippers. I listened to their complaints, their jokes, the way they talked about the city as if it were a chessboard and they knew every square. One rainy Thursday, a woman about my age came in wearing paint-splattered jeans and a ponytail held together with a pencil. She lugged 3 light fixtures up to the counter and groaned. "If I have to replace one more vintage sconce in that place, I'm going to lose my mind," she muttered. "You flipping a house?" I asked, scanning the barcodes. She raised an eyebrow. "Duplex," she said. "Got it at auction, 10 grand and a headache." My brain did a double take. $10,000? I echoed. "For a whole building?" She laughed. "You say it like that, it sounds crazy," she said. "You should see the plumbing and the rats." She grabbed her receipt, then paused. "You look like you want to ask something," she said. "How did you pull it off?" I blurted. "Like the money, the loan." She shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "FHA loan, 3.5% down," she said. "Lived in one unit to qualify as owner-occupied. Credit was good, job was steady. Bank didn't care that the place smelled like a dead raccoon as long as the numbers worked." She tilted her head. "You thinking about it?" "Someday," I said. She smiled. "Someday becomes never if you wait for everything to be perfect," she said. "Ask me how I know." When she left, I stood behind the counter staring at the door. 10 grand down. On my current savings trajectory, that was still a long way off, but not impossible. 2 years later, I walked across the stage at community college. There was no marching band, no fireworks, just a folding chair on a gym floor, my name mispronounced by a tired administrator, and a cheap black robe that smelled like plastic. Mom took a blurry photo on her phone. Dad clapped politely. Adam didn't come. He had plans. After the ceremony, we went to the same family restaurant we went to for everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, the time Adam almost got a promotion. Dad raised his glass of soda. "To Michael," he said, "our little workhorse. You make us proud, son, even if you're just taking the scenic route." They laughed. I smiled tightly. They had no idea that my scenic route letter from state had come 2 weeks earlier. "We are pleased to inform you of your acceptance as a transfer student." I didn't tell them. I'd already seen what happened when they thought they had a claim on my future. Instead, I quietly found a room for rent near campus with 3 other guys and arranged my work schedule so I could commute back on weekends to help at the hardware store. Dad grumbled about gas money. Mom murmured something about chasing dreams. I packed my car with thrift store pots and pans and left one gray August morning before the sun came up, their house shrinking in the rearview mirror. As the miles slid under my tires, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, the distance felt like choice, not exile. State was everything I'd imagined, and almost nothing like it. There were oak trees and brick buildings and kids tossing frisbees on the quad. There were also overdue electric bills taped to our apartment door and long nights washing dishes at a campus restaurant to make rent. I declared a major in civil engineering with a minor in something the catalog called real estate studies. It was a tiny program tacked on to the business school, mostly full of guys in polo shirts whose parents already owned half the town. I didn't fit in. I also didn't care. While they talked about their dad's portfolios, I scribbled notes about zoning laws and eminent domain, about how neighborhoods changed when a new development went up. I learned to read between the lines of market reports, to see which parts of town were being quietly targeted for revitalization. When other students partied on Thursdays, I sat at my cracked IKEA desk in a cramped apartment, toggling between my homework and online property listings back home. Every break, I drove back to our town. I still worked shifts at the hardware store. I still mowed my parents' lawn and picked up Adam when he called slurring into the phone. But every time I turned down our street, I saw it differently. Not just as the place I'd grown up, as parcels, lots, tax records, potential. Our block was nothing special. Modest single-story houses built in the 70s, chain-link fences, a couple of mature trees stubbornly clinging to life. But it sat 5 minutes from a major new freeway exit the city had announced just before I left for state. Traffic meant businesses. Businesses meant demand. Demand meant value. And everyone on that street, including my parents, still thought of their houses as just home. They had no idea what was coming. I bought my first property at 23. It wasn't glamorous, not a shiny downtown condo or a perfect little bungalow. It was a tired duplex on the edge of our town, a strict FHA loan just like the woman at the hardware store had described. 3.5% down. I'd scraped together every penny of my savings and borrowed a little from Mr. Alvarez, who co-signed the loan in exchange for a small equity stake. "You sure you want this headache?" he asked, squinting at the peeling siding. I was sure, because as we walked through the musty halls, I could already see it finished. Fresh paint instead of jaundiced yellow, new fixtures instead of cracked plastic, a for rent sign with my phone number on it. My parents didn't come see it. When I mentioned to Mom that I was buying a little place, she blinked. "Are you sure that's wise?" she asked. "You're not exactly rolling in money. What if something breaks?" "I'll fix it," I said, "like I always do." She frowned, like I was being difficult, then changed the subject to Heather's new car. Adam called once, half interested. "So you're going to be, what, a landlord now?" he said, laughing. "Slumlord Mikey? Don't forget to evict people when they can't pay, right?" He meant it as a joke. It wasn't funny. I cleaned up the duplex on nights and weekends, sleeping on a mattress on the floor of one unit while I sanded floors in the other. My friends at State thought I was crazy. "Why don't you relax like a normal person on break?" one of them asked. "Because normal is broke," I said. Within 6 months, I had tenants in both units. The rent barely covered the mortgage and expenses at first. But each month, a tiny sliver whittled off the principal. Each month, a few more dollars went into the emergency fund Mr. Alvarez insisted we set up. "You're not rich until your assets work harder than you do," he said. "Right now, you and this building are about tied. Give it time." I gave it time. I graduated from State at 24, the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree. They had a ceremony this time with caps and gowns and proud parents taking photos in front of neat hedges. Mom and Dad sat in the stands. Adam stayed home with a cold. Afterward, Dad squeezed my shoulder. "See," he said, "told you community college was fine. You got your degree. No need for all that fuss about dorms and fancy campuses." I smiled tightly and didn't mention the years of sleep I'd lost making it happen. I didn't tell them that while they were busy taking a blurry photo of me in my gown, the duplex's value had quietly gone up 15%, or that a second, smaller savings account was growing month by month, labeled in my online banking app with one simple word, next. They didn't need to know, not yet. 15 years is a long time to stay angry. It's also a long time to stay focused. After the duplex came a single-family house I picked up from a tired landlord who wanted out. Then another, a small 4-unit building where the roof leaked and the tenants paid in cash. Each one was a new set of headaches, a new stack of bills, a new series of late-night calls about toilets and heaters. But each one also shifted the balance a bit more. While my peers bought new cars and posted beach photos on social media, I drove used Hondas and walked empty hallways with a flashlight, imagining what could be. Back at home, life went on. Adam's baby girl turned into a toddler, then a kid, then a sullen preteen. He bounced from job to job, sales, then insurance, then something with accounts in the title that he never explained clearly. Mom always had an excuse ready. "They're just going through a rough patch," she'd say, refilling his plate at family dinners. "The economy's hard out there." Meanwhile, my duplex paid itself off. I refinanced it, pulled out equity, and rolled it into another deal. Some nights, when I was too tired to sleep, I lay awake in whatever small rental I was currently living in, always below my means, never flashy, and stared at the ceiling, picturing a mental map of our town. Here, the duplex. There, the fourplex. Over by the old freeway exit, the little house with the stubborn apple tree. And at the center of it all, like a rotten tooth in a jaw full of fillings, the street where I'd grown up. My parents still lived in the same sagging house. Adam and Heather lived 3 doors down in a beige 2-story with the mortgage my college fund had helped buy. The rest of the block was a mix of aging owners and their grown kids who couldn't quite leave. When the city council minutes mentioned a proposed shopping center less than a mile away, my heart kicked up. That was the moment I knew. It was time to stop dancing around the edges. It was time to come home. I started with a plat map of our neighborhood, not a metaphorical one, a literal, black and white county map I printed off the assessor's website at 2 in the morning, taped together on my tiny kitchen table like some conspiracy theorist planning a heist. Every house on our street was a little rectangle with a parcel number. I traced the route I used to bike as a kid, past the Miller's B place with the cracked driveway, past the duplex where the twins used to live, past our house with the half-dead maple in the yard, past Adam's beige box with its overwatered lawn. Then I opened a spreadsheet and started filling in names. Owner of 104, Mrs. Miller, widowed, kids live out of state. Owner of 106, a landlord LLC I recognize from the rent checks at the hardware store. Owner of 110, John and Melissa, the couple who were always talking about moving somewhere warmer. I didn't circle my parents' place. I didn't circle Adam's. Not yet. I circled everyone else. When you grow up on a street, you think you know everything about it: who fights, who drinks, who mows their lawn at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. You don't think about who's quietly drowning in property taxes, who's sick of climbing stairs, who's one roofing bill away from disaster. I did. And I had something most of them didn't: cash, equity, and the ability to act fast. I didn't walk up to doors with a briefcase and a slick grin. That's not how you buy a street. First, I formed an LLC, a boring name, Grey Rock Holdings. No connection to coal, no personal address, just a P.O. box and a registered agent. Then I wrote letters, simple ones. Dear homeowner, I'm interested in buying properties in your neighborhood. If you've ever considered selling, I can offer a fair cash price, close quickly, and handle all repairs. No commissions, no showings. Here's my number. I mailed 20 of them and waited. The first call came from Mrs. Miller. Her voice shook a little on the phone. I'm getting too old for this big place, honey, she said. But my son is busy and the realtor wants me to fix stuff before I list it. I don't have the energy. You'd really buy it as is? Yes, ma'am, I said. I'll come by this afternoon. We can talk terms. I showed up in jeans and a polo, a clipboard in hand. Not fancy, not threatening. She recognized me immediately. Little Mikey, she said, blinking. You used to shovel my walk for $5. That's me, I said, smiling. Only now I'm trying to shovel more than snow. She laughed, and some of the tension went out of her shoulders. We walked through the house. The carpets were worn, the wallpaper peeled at the corners. The roof had a dark stain where a leak had been patched with more hope than skill. To a retail buyer, it was a money pit. To me, it was an opportunity. I made her an offer just under market value. Fair for both of us, considering the condition and the speed. You sure you can close quick? She asked, hands twisting in front of her. Yes, I said. No bank, just me. I'll handle everything. She studied my face for a long moment, then she nodded. I'd rather sell to someone I know, she said. Someone who grew up here. My kids don't want this place. I'm tired. She smiled sadly, eyes shining. Maybe it's time to let someone else have a turn. We shook hands. 45 days later, Grey Rock Holdings owned 104. The next was the duplex at the corner, owned by that out-of-town landlord I'd seen on checks. He didn't care about the property. It was a line on a spreadsheet, nothing more. He cared about the number at the bottom of the deal. It's a C-class neighborhood, he said on the phone, dismissive. Barely covers itself. You can have it for... He named a price low enough that I almost dropped the phone. He wanted out. I wanted in. We signed. Then John and Melissa, tired of winters that hurt their bones. Then Mr. and Mrs. Lee, whose son had been begging them to downsize since his dad's heart scare. Some deals took months. Some days felt like nothing but dead ends and we'll think about it that never turned into calls back. All the while, I kept my face neutral at family dinners. How's work? Dad asked, loading his plate. Busy, I said. People always need somewhere to live. He nodded, not really listening, already turning to ask Adam how the new job at the marketing firm was going. Nailed another client, Adam said, grinning. I swear they eat out of my hand. Mom clapped, delighted. I looked down at my plate, the corner of my mouth twitching. By the time I turned 32, Grey Rock Holdings owned 6 out of 10 houses on our street and 1 corner duplex. Then the city broke ground on the new shopping center. Construction trucks rolled in like an invading army. They tore up the vacant lot on the other side of the highway, poured concrete, raised steel skeletons that would become big box stores and chain restaurants. The local news did a cheerful segment about revitalization and jobs. Property values in a 1-mile radius jumped almost overnight. So did property taxes. Neighbors who'd ignored my letters before started knocking on my door. I heard you buy houses, Mr. Lee said, hat in hand. The tax bill. I don't know how much longer we can carry it. You're still looking for properties, right? Melissa asked, baby on her hip. Florida is calling our name. We'd rather sell to you than some stranger. I bought 3 more houses that year. Sometimes I signed closing documents in a lawyer's office in a suit. Sometimes I sat at a kitchen table, the same kind of table my parents had used to gut my college fund, and slid paperwork across wood scarred by decades of family dinners. Each time, the weight of what I was doing settled a little deeper in my chest. I wasn't flipping and leaving, I was consolidating. I rehabbed the worst of the houses, new roofs, fresh siding, proper insulation, the kind of repairs that normal families couldn't afford all at once, but that I could spread across balance sheets and rent rolls. Tenants moved into places that had been falling apart. Rents covered expenses and then some. The street, my street, started to look less tired, all under a bland name on tax records. Grayrock Holdings. On paper, the Coles were now just 2 of the last holdouts. Mom and Dad in their sagging single-story at 112. Adam and Heather in their beige, over-leveraged 116. They had no idea. The job market turned on Adam before the ink had fully dried on my last purchase. The marketing firm he'd been bragging about for months folded when their main client pulled out. One day he had a business card and a LinkedIn full of buzzwords. The next day he had nothing but a severance check and a bruised ego. He lasted a few weeks on savings, or on Heather's credit cards I never asked, before the calls started. Hey, lil bro, can you spot me a couple hundred? Just until my unemployment kicks in. We're short on the kids' school clothes this month, you know how it is. We're family, right? Each time I weighed my options. Not helping at all felt cold. Becoming their personal ATM felt suicidal. I drew a line. I'll pay for groceries, I said, and the kids' school supplies, but I'm not covering your mortgage, Adam. There was a beat of stunned silence. It's temporary, he protested. You know I'll get back on track. You're doing well. You can help. I am helping, I said. I'm helping the part of the family that didn't choose to be born into this mess. He hung up on me. The next time I drove down our street, a red and white for sale sign sprouted in Adam's front yard like a wound. He tried to bluff at first. At Sunday dinner, he waved his fork dismissively. We're just testing the market, he said. Values are up. Might as well cash out and upgrade, right, Dad? Dad thumped him on the back. That's my boy, he said, always thinking big. Mom looked worried. Her fingers twisted the napkin just like they had the night they'd gutted my future. Old habits. You'll stay close, though, won't you? She asked. The kids love walking over. Sure, Mom, he said. We're not going anywhere. Except he was, because I'd seen the missed payment notices in the stack of mail on their counter when I dropped off groceries. I'd heard the tightness in Heather's voice when she called the insurance company about extension options. I'd watched Adam's smiles grow more brittle as month after month passed, and no perfect job materialized. Houses that look okay on the outside can rot from the inside if you ignore the foundation. Houses and people. Their listing price was too high for the condition. Heather had insisted on staging, on professional photos. They slapped lipstick on a pig and wondered why no one wanted to pay top dollar for it. Months went by, the sign stayed, the market cooled just a bit as interest rates ticked up. Then one afternoon I got a call from a local realtor I knew. Hey Michael, she said, you still looking for off-market deals? Always, I said. She lowered her voice. I've got a motivated seller on your old street, she said. You might know them. The brother's name is Adam. They're behind. Banks breathing down their neck. They need a clean, fast offer or they're headed for foreclosure. I let the silence stretch for a second. My heart was hammering, but my voice, when it came, was steady. Send me the numbers, I said. I'll have my company take a look. We met at the title company, not at the house. Too many memories there. Too many echoes of that 17-year-old version of me staring at a brochure while his parents dismantled his future. The title office was neutral ground. Beige walls, neutral art, a plant slowly dying in a corner. Adam and Heather sat at the conference table, Heather's lips pressed thin, Adam's knee bouncing like a jackhammer under the table. Mom and Dad were there, too, for moral support. Mom clutched her purse like a life raft. Dad's jaw was clenched, eyes darting between the door and the stack of papers. They were expecting some faceless investor, a man in an expensive suit, a stranger. The receptionist opened the door. "Greyrock's representative is here," she said. I walked in. The room went silent. Heather's mouth fell open. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Dad gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles went white. Adam stared at me like he'd never seen me before. What is this?" he sputtered. "Michael, why are you here?" I sat down calmly across from them, folder in hand, heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. "I'm here as the buyer," I said. Silence. Heather found her voice first. "This is some kind of joke, right?" she said, forcing a laugh that died halfway. "You can't be the buyer, you—" "Greyrock Holdings," I said, sliding the folder across the table so they could see the letterhead. "That's my company." Mom's eyes darted over the logo, then back to me. You own a company?" she whispered, as if that were the unbelievable part. I almost laughed. "Several," I said, "but that's not what we're here to talk about, is it?" Dad's face flushed a deep red. "So this has been you," he said slowly. "All these stories about some mysterious investor buying up houses on the block, that's you." "Most of them, yes," I said. "Mrs. Miller's place, the Lees, the duplex on the corner, John and Melissa's old house, the Johnsons, the blue one that used to belong to the Ramirez family, the little yellow one across from you, Mom." I watched the realization dawn in their faces, one by one, like lights flicking on in a darkened room. "I own 8 of the 10 properties on our street," I finished softly. "Yours are the last 2 I don't." Mom's lips trembled. "All this time," she whispered. "You never said. You never asked," I said. The realtor shifted uncomfortably, sensing the storm brewing but not knowing the history. Why didn't you tell us?" Adam demanded, leaning forward. "You're sitting on all this, and you let me—" "Let you what?" I cut in. "Refinance your SUV twice? Ignore your mortgage until the bank threatened to take your house? Blow every bonus check at the casino under the excuse of blowing off steam?" His mouth snapped shut. I took a breath, forcing my shoulders to stay relaxed. "This isn't about me letting you do anything, Adam," I said. "These are your choices. These are your consequences." Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the pens jump. "You're talking to your brother," he barked. "Have some respect." I turned to him. Respect. 17-year-old me flinched inside, the old reflex, but 32-year-old me stayed put. "Like the respect you showed me when you emptied my college fund without telling me?" I asked quietly. Mom flinched as if I'd slapped her. "We did what we had to do," Dad shot back. "For the family," I nodded slowly. "And I did what I had to do," I said. "For myself. For the family I might have someday. For the kids in this town who need decent places to live." I gestured to the paperwork between us. "Right now, this is about your house, Adam. You need a buyer. I'm offering to be that buyer." Heather swallowed. "At what price?" she asked, voice small. I slid the offer sheet across the table. It was fair, not generous, not predatory, enough to pay off their mortgage, cover closing costs, and leave them with a small cushion if they managed it wisely. Nowhere near the fantasy numbers Adam had babbled about when the market was hot. He scanned it, color draining from his face. "This is low," he snapped. "The house down the street sold for." 3 years ago," I said, "when interest rates were lower and the roof didn't need replacing, and there wasn't a lien for unpaid taxes. I've seen the title report." He glared at me. "So that's it?" he demanded. "You swoop in, buy our house for cheap, and what? Kick us out? Walk around like you own the whole damn street?" "I already own the whole damn street," I said quietly, "except for this and Mom and Dad's place." The room went still. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Michael," she whispered, you wouldn't take our home." I looked at her, really looked, at the new lines etched around her eyes, at the way her hands trembled slightly, at the gray streak creeping into her hair. I exhaled. "I'm not here to punish you, Mom," I said. "If I wanted that, I'd have let the bank take Adam's house and let you watch it sell at auction to a stranger. I didn't. I made an offer." I turned back to Adam and Heather. "You have 2 options," I said. "Sell to me at this price and walk away with something, or wait for the foreclosure and walk away with nothing. Either way, your current reality is over." Heather stared at the numbers, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "We can't afford to move," she whispered. "Not far, not with the kids' school." "I own 8 properties on this street and 3 within walking distance," I said. "If you want to be my tenants, we can talk about that." Standard lease, market rent, no special deals. No, I'll pay you back when things get better texts. Adam bristled. You'd make your own brother pay full rent? He spat. You're not a child, I said. You're a grown man with 2 kids and a long history of living above your means. I'm done subsidizing your denial. Dad opened his mouth, but Mom put a hand on his arm, stopping him. She looked at me, something like understanding and fear warring in her gaze. What about us? She asked quietly. Our house. I sat back. I'd thought about this moment more times than I could count. About storming in and waving deeds around, about making speeches, about demanding apologies, standing there in that beige conference room with the weight of years pressing in. None of that felt right. I'm not forcing you to do anything, I said. If you want to stay in your house and keep paying your taxes and maintenance and everything else, that's your choice. You can own it until the day you die. She sagged with relief. Or, I added gently, you can sell it to me for a fair price, and I'll give you a lifetime lease. You stay as long as you want, at a token rent. No property tax surprises, no repairs you can't afford. When you're both gone, the house reverts to my company. Dad stiffened. That's charity, he snapped. I'm not some charity case, I shrugged. Call it whatever you want, I said. Safety, stability, a way to make sure Mom doesn't have to choose between meds and roof leaks when you're not around to fix them. His face crumpled for just a second at that, the thought of his own mortality slipping past his pride. No one spoke. The ticking of the cheap clock on the wall suddenly sounded very loud. Finally, Heather wiped her eyes and whispered, We'll sign. Adam stared at her like she'd betrayed him, but the fight went out of his shoulders. He knew. He'd known on some level for months. The realtor slid the papers in front of them, explaining each section in a soothing monotone. They signed with shaky hands. When the pen reached me, my fingers were steady. The title agent notarized. The copies were made. The deal was done. Adam and Heather's house, bought 15 years ago with the stolen bones of my future, now belonged to me. Not to rub in their faces, to stabilize the block, to break a cycle. Mom and Dad needed more time. They didn't decide that day. But a month later, after a sharp winter and a brutal tax bill, Mom called me, voice small. Can we talk about that thing you mentioned? She asked. The lifetime thing. We sat at their kitchen table, the one where they'd once taken my college away, and I spread out new papers. This time, I laid them gently, like setting down something fragile. Dad grumbled about losing pride, but he signed. Mom signed with tears on her cheeks. When it was done, she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. For, back then, we thought we were doing what we had to. I didn't think about how much it would cost you. I swallowed. For 15 years, I'd fantasized about this apology, about how I'd savor it, how I'd finally feel vindicated. In reality, it just made my throat tight. I know, I said. You didn't think. I let the words hang there. Then I squeezed her hand back. I'm okay now, I added. I made it anyway. People assume revenge feels like fireworks, like some big cinematic moment where the villain falls to their knees and begs and you walk away into a sunset, coat flapping dramatically. In real life, it felt like paperwork, like the quiet click of a pen, like the squeak of a for sale sign being pulled out of a lawn, like keys changing hands. There was satisfaction, yes. The first time I walked down that street after all the deals were done, I felt taller. Every mailbox I passed, every worn front step, every tree I'd once climbed, I either owned it or had a stake in it. This place that had once made me feel small and powerless was now something I had shaped with my own hands. But it wasn't just about owning the asphalt and lumber. It was about never again having my life turned upside down by someone else's secret decision. Adam and Heather moved into one of my smaller houses on the edge of town. They signed a lease like any other tenants. They paid rent, late sometimes, but with late fees and boundaries they'd never had before. Our relationship didn't magically heal. He resented me. I didn't trust him. We were polite at holidays for Mom's sake. We didn't pretend to be close. I made a different kind of effort with his kids. Not buying them things. God knows they had enough of that from guilt gifts. Time. I taught his son how to change a tire. Helped his daughter with her science homework. Not to undermine Adam, but to break the pattern. To show them another way to be a Cole. Mom and Dad relaxed, slowly, in the knowledge that the house wouldn't be ripped out from under them by taxes or creditors. Dad never explicitly thanked me. But I saw him sitting on the porch some evenings, watching the street with a look that wasn't quite pride and wasn't quite regret. Maybe something like acceptance. One night, as I was leaving, he cleared his throat. "You did good," he said gruffly, not quite meeting my eyes. "With all this, the houses, the whatever you call it." "Portfolio," I said. "Yeah, that." He scratched his chin. "Your grandpa would have liked that," he added. "Owning something real, not just talk." It was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get from him. I took it. Sometimes when I walk that street now, kids are playing where I used to. A bike lies abandoned on a lawn. Someone's dog barks at me from behind a fence. If you didn't know the history, it would look like any other modest, slowly improving block on the edge of a growing town. No one sees the 17-year-old boy who stood in a cramped kitchen, watching his future get signed away in the name of family. No one sees the late nights at community college, the double shifts, the basements full of mold, and the roofs patched in the rain. They see a landlord who fixes things quickly. A guy in his 30s who nods hello and pays his taxes on time. I like it that way. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't about making my parents grovel or watching my brother crash. It was about proving, quietly and relentlessly, that I could build the life they'd told me I had to postpone indefinitely. That I could take the exact kind of asset they valued more than my education, a house, and use it to secure my own future and then theirs on my terms. In the end, buying that street wasn't about owning them. It was about owning myself. If you've ever been the one everyone assumes will land on their feet while they hand your safety net to someone else, you know how it feels to be both invisible and indispensable. You also know that nobody is coming to fix that for you. You have two choices. You can stay bitter. You can sit in the same house on the same street, telling yourself stories about what might have been if other people had been kinder. Or you can get to work. You can learn, save, watch. Take the ugly, unfair thing that happened to you and use it as kindling for something bigger, steadier, yours. It will probably take longer than you think. It will probably hurt more than you expect. But one day, you might find yourself walking past the places that used to make you feel small, holding a ring of keys, knowing that you earned every single one. And in that moment, the whispers of old betrayals won't be louder than the sound of your own footsteps.